I would ask that we are going to be doing things just a little bit different this evening. After we get through the proclamations and the community-related announcements and stuff, we're going to recess and open the Midwest City Hospital Authority to facilitate a visitor to get back to the airport, and then we'll reopen the council meeting after that. So follow along. I would like to ask Mr. Sullivan to come down and offer the invocation. The Pledge of Allegiance be led by Councilwoman Eads. Ooh. Please pray for me, Vaughn. And for Susan.
You're going to need it, Mayor. Father God, we thank you so much for the beauty of this day. Father, we give you the glory and the honor for that. Father, and this occasion tonight that this council has assembled to conduct the business of Midwest City. Father, we thank you for them and their service and the sacrifice they make for the betterment of this community. Father, we ask that the decisions that are before them would be made in impartiality and with your discernment and your wisdom, Lord. Father, be with them in those decisions tonight. Father, we have a beautiful and wonderful community here that we enjoy, and it's a great place to live, work, and play, and we give you thanks for that blessing. A great state and a great nation, and Father, we have many men and women all over the world who are defending and ensuring our freedoms to assemble like we're doing tonight. Father, I'd ask a blessing of peace and comfort and protection be upon them. Father, I thank you for their sacrifice, and I thank you for their families, and I'd ask that you comfort all of them in this time of service, Lord. Father, be with the leaders of our nation as well and the decisions that they make on a daily basis, and grant them wisdom and discernment as well. Father, we thank you so much for the ultimate example of selfless sacrifice through you, your Son, and the sacrifice of your Son on the cross. Father, we thank you for that blood that was shed on our behalf. It cleanses us and keeps us pure. We ask all these favors that we've put before you tonight, Lord. We ask these things in your Son, Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would want to remind council members to please speak into your mic. We're streaming on channel 20, and if the teleprompt or the conversion for the on-screen closed caption, if it doesn't pick up our voices, it won't convert it. So, community-related announcements.
Mayor, I have a couple.
Yes, ma'am.
First off, I want to start out by thanking our staff for a wonderful Made in Oklahoma event. Vaughn, Fran, Parks and Recs, Sarah over there. For those of you, if you weren't able to make it, please put it on your calendar for next year because it was a wonderful event. Unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate with us quite as much as we had hoped. But a great event was planned and executed, and so I thank all of our staff for that. Additionally, one of our current issues is our animal shelter is at capacity with a lot of strays, and it's been that way all of last month. Other neighboring municipalities are facing the same issue. When I was at Pet Vet Supply today, they had a microchip insert special that they're running for $35 if anyone is interested in that. Being able to identify the pets and get them back to their owners. Our fire department and our library just sponsored a free pet ID tag event. Excuse me, the last weekend of April, as I recall, April 26th and 27th. So hopefully folks took advantage of that. But if you can identify those pets, it helps our staff move those animals back to your home. The other thing I wanted to mention is May 23rd is the last day of school for the Middale District. So there are going to be a lot more kids out and about in the summer, so please be traffic aware and pedestrian aware if you would. And that's all I have.
Anyone else?
Yes. Yes, I would like to announce the Midwest City Ward 5 Town Hall meeting. It will be Thursday, May the 16th, 2019, and at 6:45 p.m. It's a meet and greet. And it is with Ward 5, it's with myself, Councilwoman Christine, it's sharing a vision and moving forward. And it is a town hall meeting for Ward 5 in reference to a lot of transitioning with school closing, and that we have a discussion with Ward 5 residents because we do care. So we look forward to anyone, if you're outside of Ward 5, excuse me, you're welcome to come. But I am asking that Ward 5 residents do attend this town hall meeting. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Got a
Do what-
couple minutes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. We're quickly approaching the opening of the Reno Swim and Slide. It opens up May 25th. We got all the guards we need, Vaughn? Working on it, okay. If anybody needs a summer job, we're looking for lifeguards. Pool passes on sale for $45 each. On June 8th, there will be the Tinker Intertribal Powwow out in Regional Park. June 1st and June 2nd will be the Star Spangled Salute Air Show at Tinker Air Force Base. Our offices will be closed for Memorial Day on May 27th. And if you were to receive your sanitation service on Monday, the 27th, that will be delayed until Wednesday, the 29th. That's all I have.
Excuse me, I need to make another announcement. I did not exactly state the location, but it is at the Midwest City Community Center, and that's where the town hall meeting for Ward 5 will be held.
Okay. I would like to remind everybody that this is Police Memorial Week. Tomorrow is the actual memorial, and our flags will be lowered to half-staff in remembrance of that. I do want to remind you that last year throughout the United States, we lost 163 police officers in the line of duty. So if you have a minute tomorrow, please remember those lost and their families that they left behind. With that being said, we've got a couple of proclamations. So this is Chris Whitlow. He's been employed the Midwest City for a long time, right, Chris? And he had one of those non-glorious jobs that he went around and cleaned stuff up, didn't you? And but he's a very loyal and dedicated employee. He has decided to retire, and a well-deserved retirement at that, Chris. So we like to recognize our employees here at Midwest City, and we try to do so in a public manner. So whereas Chris Whitlow began his employment with the Midwest City on August 20th, 1984, as a janitor, and is retiring April 26, 2019. Whereas from the beginning of his career, Chris has proven that he's hardworking, cooperative, dependable, kind-hearted, devoted to his work without complaint, thus enhancing the quality of life for our citizens and co-workers utilizing city facilities. Whereas Chris' work ethic was described by Fran Giles as a good umpire, and is an umpire that really doesn't draw too much attention to himself, but without him, you couldn't play the game. That's a pretty good analogy there, Fran. And Chris was like that in just his work, but everything else in his life. Whereas he has received many accolades from both employees and citizens, how he will do anything to help, like come in early, or come in after hours to clean, demonstrating he continually serves others outside the requirements of his job. So therefore, I, Matt Dukes, Mayor of Midwest City, do hereby proclaim May 14th, 2019 as Chris Whitlow Day. Please give him a round of applause. We've got a great bunch of employees here at Midwest City, and Chris, you're going to be hard to replace, buddy. Another proclamation. Do we have anybody here to accept? Vaughn? Make some parks, right? Whereas May 18th, 2019 is the 9th Kids to Parks Day, organized and launched by the National Park held annually on the third Saturday of May. Whereas Kids to Parks empowers kids, encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks. Whereas it's important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks. And whereas we should encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and I'm not even going to try that. Whereas Kids Parks Day is open to all children and adults across the country to encourage a large and diverse group of participants. Whereas Kids Park Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and the outdoors. So therefore, on that news, Mayor of Midwest City hereby proclaims May 18th as Kids Parks Day. Hopefully, we'll have no one folks in the parks. Again, I would ask your indulgence and ask that the city council be recessed. I need a motion from the floor.
Move to recess.
Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now here. We are hereby recessed. I now call to order the Midwest City Memorial Hospital Authority. We do have a consent agenda, and the chair would entertain a motion.
Motion to accept
I-
consent agenda.
On the consent agenda for the hospital authority, to clarify?
Yes.
Thank you. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. You have one discussion item, and Mr. Garrels, you have the podium, sir.
Good evening. Am I close enough? Can you hear me okay?
You might
Yes, sir.
Move
Okay.
up a little
Mo-
more, Jim.
It's an honor to be here in year 23 with you, and the fund in question here would start out at 40 million back in September of '96, and it's paid out over 80 million, and 30 million has come back over the years. And as you know, last September it went over. One more. Thank you. Better? As you know, last September, it went over 100 million. And no sooner did that happen than mostly in December, had a little drop in the market because hedge funds have formulas that call for selling big time when short rates get higher than longer rates. And in this case, it was sort of insane because when you're talking about the difference between the 2-year Treasury and the 5-year Treasury, it really is supposed to be the 90-day T-bill and the 10-year Treasury, but which happened the other day and nobody noticed. They're so busy talking about impeachment and other things. But anyway, it'll go faster. You're probably wondering, most of all, as you know, yesterday, the fund dropped below 100, and today, it went back over. It was up over 1%, which we're only like $3,500 from, I have it in here, I'll read it, it'll be faster for you. But number one, the total fund composite, that's everything, finished the quarter ending 3/31/19 at $100,539,99, up $9,455,722 from its 12/31/18 close of $91,075,277. Number two, the recent U.S. stock market turmoil caused by fears of a trade war with China, which are still cooking, of course, knocked the market down sharply yesterday, pushing the TFC, that's, again, the total fund of everything that's in there, back below the $100 million mark at $99,996,951, $3,049 below the $100 million mark, which was the reason why I no dark hair left, Rick, basically, but that's what it does to me. Number three, as of 2:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time today, all the major stock averages, S&P 500, Dow, and NASDAQ, were all up well over 1% on the day. Barring any cataclysmic events by today's close, the total fund composite should be back up over 100 million, and it was. It was up, all three were up more than 1%, so we're definitely back over 100 today. So knock on wood, but it keeps going that way. Number four, the total fund outperformed its policy portfolio benchmark for all measured time periods longer than 1 year, as well as for the quarter. Only the 1 year return trailed its benchmark up 6.75% versus 7.85%. Number five, all total fund composite returns placed in the top half of its policy portfolio universe, with the 5 year and 2 year since inception return placing in the top quartile. That is one of our goals, by the way, is to be in the top half consistently over a long period of time. It'll drive you up into the top quartile, and typically ahead of the market index that you're trying to outperform. Basically, those are supposed to be reflecting the market environment that we're in, and I think that they do. Number six, the total equity fund, those are your stock funds that are supposed to be outperforming the market, outperformed the S&P 500 benchmark for the quarter and for the 3 and 5 year periods, both in the top quartile, top 25% of several thousand funds in the universe. Number seven, I remember this came up last time I was in front of you, that there were questions about how much in cash. Cash reserves as of yesterday, Monday, May 13th, were $17,516,306, up 29,731 from their 3/31 close of $17,486,575. So basically pretty close to where they were at the end of last quarter. Number eight, the total fund composite has been 24% less risky, having a lower beta. That's the volatility relative to the market's volatility. The market being S&P 500 for the past 3 years. It's all been done by design and has been done by including bonds and cash reserves in the asset allocation. That's the buffer that when the market goes against us, which it does, that's one of the taxes in the market going down from time to time, are all in there. But that's our defense. The stock part's the offense. So, number eight, worries, trade war, impeachment, reversal of the current policy by the Federal Reserve of no rate increases this year. And as you know, that 60% of our model is based on what the Fed does or doesn't do. So there's a big influence on our recommendations to change your asset allocation at certain times. We haven't had to do it too many times in the not market timers. We're trying to have the fund reflect what is. And generally they don't change that quickly as far as the 60%. The other 20% of the economy, excuse me, and 20% on the market for a total of 100%. But it's the biggest thing is the Fed. So reversal of current policy by the Federal Reserve of no rate increases this year, and finally an inverted yield curve, which I just mentioned, short-term interest rates higher than long rates, which occurred in minor fashion during the fourth quarter of last year, fomenting that sell-off and many others over the last 90 years. And it is a biggie for me, as you know. So we've only had to do it a couple of times since I've been with you, and I hope we don't have to do it too often, but it's been sort of crazy. This bull market is the longest one in history. It's over 10 years now. It bottomed on March 9th, 2009. So it's getting pretty long of tooth, as the expression goes, and it's not all as predictable as it can be, if it is predictable. I thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Girls? Hearing none, I need a motion to accept his report.
Move to second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Girls.
Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we move into the new business public discussion in the hospital authority. Does anybody have anything to bring before the authority or the trustees? Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned. I would ask that we come out of recess and call to order the council agenda. We'll move into the council. I call back to order the council agenda, and we move into the consent agenda. These items are placed on the consent agenda so that the council, by unanimous consent, can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with the approval of all council members or members of the audience wish to discuss an item, it will be heard or be removed and heard in regular order. And before I entertain a motion, I would like to pull item number 5 from the consent agenda and have it tabled.
I would like to pull item number 10 for discussion. If no one has anything else, with the exception of numbers 5 and 10, move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Okay, I need to see. Kane, I don't have mine up here. Okay. All right, I didn't see it on the screen. Let's get my chat with it. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor to pull items 5 and 10. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. On item number 5, I just ask that this be tabled and tabled and brought back to the council at a later date.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Items tabled. Ms. Eads?
With regard to item number 10, I believe I raised this issue last year, and I have the same issue again. I object to us paying a 50-piece concert band to provide headliner entertainment for our 4th of July festivities. I raised the issue before, and I'm going to raise it again, that we have students, both high schools, the middle schools, who are capable and competent to perform concerts. And I would ask that we pursue that as an option rather than pay $12,000 for professional entertainment. I also believe it's a means to an end to increase the attendance at our 4th of July festivities, because people want to come out to see their children and grandchildren perform in band activities. And so I raised that for consideration. It may very well be too late to modify this for this year, but I raised it last year, and obviously I didn't get heard on my concerns, so I'm raising it again.
I think your concerns are very justified, but I don't know if the way that Middale Public Schools are set up, that bands can perform when school's closed. Vaughn,
That's
is that-
correct. We've made this request in the past, and when school is out, it is against school, what we've been told in the past is against school policy for them to have an activity when school's not in session. And this is during the summer, and we've asked for several different performances over the years and been denied that request by Middale Schools.
Vaughn, when you say over the years, how long ago was that? Because as you know, administrations change.
I couldn't tell you exactly. I would have to defer to Parks and Recreation staff, but we have been denied that request in the past. I can
So-
confirm that.
If we were to table this, would it cause any problems if we tabled it for 2 weeks and let you get the answer to her question? Contractually, or with this gentleman, we wouldn't lose him if we tabled this for 2 weeks, would we?
I don't think so, no.
I understand, I mean, we are approaching we're at the middle of May essentially, so I'm willing to let this go forward as far as that goes. I would just ask that the issue be revisited. I understand you've revisited in the past.
We'll
I
revisit it
just
again.
would
Yes.
really appreciate it, because again, I do believe, being out there year after year, it's a family-friendly event. The more families that we can get to come out there, and if we have a driver for that versus them having their own 4th of July celebrations, et cetera, it's a more successful event for us. It's a more successful event for the vendors that we get out there, so I would just make that request.
We have a very difficult time, even during school, getting cooperation from the schools for extracurricular activities and performances. We've made many requests, and it's just difficult to get that, to make that happen, especially in the summer months. But we'll ask one more time.
Wow. On that count, please, I would like to say this, that when you mentioned Midwest City, I think we need to mention schools entirely in Midwest City, that all Midwest City schools, students attend here in Midwest City. So if we, in reference to that, you said Midwest City, I think we need to include all the schools that our residents attend here in Midwest City.
Absolutely,
That we reach
absolutely.
out to them.
Ms. Allen, that,
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you bringing that up, and we make every effort to include every school system that we can
In
get to
Midwest City,
participate in
right.
anything we can invite them to, absolutely.
And then, on that note, consider that, that this is, a little bit, you all made arrangements. I think that we need to pursue with what you're trying to, your program, and if there's any revisit, we need to plan that next year and not disturb what we have going on right now, planning
That's
for
what he
Midwest
just said he
City.
was going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I move a motion that we accept.
Since I think, from a parliamentary standpoint, since Ms. Eads pulled the item, she needs to make the motion to bring it back.
Oh, I
on the
didn't know
agenda.
that was in the parliamentary rules. Okay.
So, Ms. Eads, are you saying that you'll bring this back to the table for consideration?
Yes.
Okay?
So if I withdraw my request to remove it from consent, or since we've already voted on consent, if you would like to just move to
So I don't-
approve it as an individual item at this point,
Yes, ma'am.
that's my motion at this time, and I do appreciate
second it.
just the consideration to ask the question, and I think there's a good rationale behind it, so.
Okay. So I do have a motion, and I have a second. Any further discussion?
And then another time, we can look at that parliamentary rule for us, but you made the suggestion, you pulled it. Okay, the Robert's
Order.
Law, we need to look at that. Thank you
Robert's
very
Rules
much.
of Order.
Thank you.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. We now move into the discussion items of our agenda.
First item is PC 1990, discussion consideration of approval of the proposed preliminary plat of Cassidy Cove, Section 3, described as part of the northwest quarter of Section 1, Township 11 North, Range 2 West, located at 500 and 600 Davidson Road. Mr. Harless?
Thank you, Mr. Henson. Due to the complexity of the drainage basin within this area and the subdivision of this property, the council has asked us to take another look at it as far as drainage. And so we secured the services of Tim Johnson and Associates to look at this, take a better look at this. He came back after evaluating it and would like to take a look at the downstream drainage and some of the upstream drainage, is how this all fits together. And they're going to need to go out in the field to take some shots. So they don't have a recommendation except for extending this or tabling this till the next council meeting. And so staff would recommend that we do that. Be glad to answer any questions at this time.
How many times do we table this before it has to get sent back to start all over? Are we under that time limit?
The applicant has been cooperative, and has been, now, he's a little nervous at what we'll come back with, on this, but, he's been cooperative with this, and as long as he's willing to do that, then we'll go forward with it, or until we get an answer from Mr. Johnson, which I fully think that we'll get something pretty quick. I think they've been out there this week shooting since the rains let up a little bit.
Okay, do you know if he's reached out to the other individual on St. Paul to make sure that what gets done on Davidson doesn't adversely affect, if we have the deal from St. Paul come back up?
Yeah.
I've read his memo, and it didn't exactly say that, but it kind of looked like he was taking that into consideration.
He's taking that in consideration, but I don't know that he's reached out to them. And he's also in contact to the applicant's consulting engineer too. They're sharing information and stuff, so.
So no action's needed, or is action needed?
So you're requesting that no action taken on this item?
Yes, sir, be tabled till,
Tabled or no action
No,
taken?
it needs to be tabled because this was a public hearing, so.
yes, sir.
Do I have a motion to
Motion to
table?
table.
I have a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Next two items.
We're going to jump to item D3. Consider and award the sale of general obligation bonds of the City of Midwest City, Oklahoma in the amount of $17,250,000 to the lowest bidder, Mr. Nito. Mr. Nito is our financial advisor, and he opened the bids today, so he'll give you a report.
Hello, council. Not that tall. And by the way, guy, while they're passing this out, do you need a summer job as far as the water parks and everything?
Do I need a summer job?
The lifeguard?
I have plenty of summer honeydews. No, honeydews.
Being passed around is the results of the bids we took in today. We had 4 bids came in, and I seem to be amazed every single time so far recently that we've opened these. We had projected these bonds to go out at 3.25%, and that was a drop down from the previous issue. These came in, as you can see, the low bid was a 2.781111. It's pretty amazing. We're pretty excited about that. Judging, I went through and did some rough calculations. That's going to be with the premium they paid and the lower interest rate. That's going to be about $1 million less than what we projected. Now, once we get this on the tax rolls, I'll come back to you probably in a couple of months, and after we get a certified valuation for the next year, and we'll be able to evaluate when we can do the next series of these bonds. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. You'll have money at the end of June in this next 17,250, and then we'll be rolling along to look at the next, hopefully last series.
With as healthy as the bond market is, at least for the city of Midwest City, when we put bonds out there, pardon me, are we better to look at rolling the third bond out sooner as opposed to later?
I'll look at that. The consensus has been that we don't think the feds are going to raise rates the rest of the year, but that can change tomorrow.
Well, they're making noise like they might actually lower them.
Exactly. I mean, it's the crystal ball is so fuzzy. We were a little bit worried, to be real candid with you, about the information coming out of China yesterday, as was mentioned in your evaluation from the hospital authority. It caused another what we call flight to quality. I mean, there were just more people looking at these fixed term AA minus rated bonds that are like gold from the standpoint of the investors market. So I know you've mentioned that before, Councilman. We will continue to evaluate that if we see.
And the only reason I brought this up specifically is we're paying off some of our other, so our millage is below 10. You saved us, or the market saved us $1 million.
I did.
The one that.
Go ahead. I'm
The
sorry.
one, if it'll make you feel better, you did. The one that you did a couple of months ago, beginning of the year, saved us more than that. So if we're able to stay below that 10 and roll this out earlier on favorable terms, because I think 10 was kind of where everybody's sweet spot was. So if we can keep it under 10 mils and roll it out earlier and take advantage of the markets, we probably should.
And what we'll do, and that's kind of what I was alluding to, that once we get a certified valuation, for 19 and 20, which we won't have until after the end of, after July 1. And that certifies the levies, the actual levies. We've got our forecast, but this is just that will certify the actual levies. Then we will jump right into it and see where rates are, and if we need to accelerate it. And we've even mentioned, you know, if it even bumps us a little over 10 mills to go do the balance, that you can explain it to the public, that we feel it's very cost effective. But we're on top of that. We will definitely monitor that and make sure.
And this was the second phase
Yes, sir.
of a three-phase approach to fund the $53 million general obligation bond that was approved by a vote back in 2018.
This will make the total issue between these two issues is a little over 37 million.
Any further questions, Mr. Nito?
This is a very good bid, by the way.
Hearing none, we need to conduct a roll call vote. City Clerk?
Motion,
Or I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
D.A. Davidson.
I have a motion and a second. Conduct a roll call vote.
Ward 1. 2. 3. 4. 5.
Aye.
6. Mayor.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna-
Motion carries. Next item.
This is consider and adopt an ordinance providing for the issuance of general obligation bonds in the sum of $17,250,000 by the City of Midwest City, Oklahoma, authorized an election duly called and held for such purpose, prescribing form of bonds, providing for registration thereof, providing for a system of registration for uncertificated registered public obligations, providing levy of an annual tax for payment of principal and interest on the same, fixing other details of the issue, and declaring an emergency.
This is just the details of the actual authorizing the issuance of the bonds.
Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Nito, once again?
Second.
Right, but we'll do, yeah.
Do
No.
the, no. I've got a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Roll call vote, please.
Ward 1.
Aye.
2. 3.
Aye.
4. 5.
Aye.
6. Mayor.
Aye. Now we would entertain a motion to declare an emergency.
Move to approve on an emergency basis.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Once again, roll call vote, please.
Ward 1.
Aye.
2. 3.
Aye.
4. 5.
Aye.
6. Mayor.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Nito.
Sounded like a little song there.
Yeah. If we'd added a little harmony, man,
Get Vaughn up here, he's got the voice.
next discussion item.
This would be discussion consideration of one, approving a change order in the amount of $22,770 with Safety Com, Inc. for additional equipment to encrypt the outdoor warning sirens, and two, purchasing the necessary encrypted radio equipment from Total Radio in the amount of $29,973.24 per the Oklahoma State Contract SW 1053M, Public Safety Communication Equipment, Motorola Solutions. Mr. Bauer, is Mr. Bauer still here? Okay. Ryan, you want to come up? Bring Scott up with you? You might introduce Scott. He's one of those guys that nobody knows except when you're in trouble, and
That's
you
right.
better know who he is.
So this is Scott Walsh. Scott handles the radio communication system and also the storm sirens, and he can actually give you an update on the 10 new storm sirens. He's been working on that all day.
Go right ahead.
Storm sirens, all 10 storm sirens have been installed. They're operational.
I have a comment regarding that. It was interesting to me that the last time that sirens were sounded, there was a push out on social media about being able to readily hear and recognize the siren as opposed to the way it used to be. So obviously, that investment has already proved itself worthy from members of our community. So just kudos. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so, Ryan, Scott, what will this change order accomplish?
So this will actually encrypt the sirens. So there has been some incidents in the Dallas, Texas area where third parties other than emergency responders and emergency management have been able to sound the sirens. And so this encryption technology will prevent that from happening in New West City. And Scott can speak more to that if you'd like.
That's correct. Dallas had several hours of storm sirens going off from 11 o'clock at night until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And who knows why, but we are particularly a target since we have brand new storm sirens. And this is something that we've been trying to accomplish for a long time. And the technology is new, and we know that this will work. And so this is an important part of the storm siren system for Midwest City.
Thank you, Scott.
Does anyone have any questions of Scott or Ryan? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next item.
And I might mention this, these next 3 or 4 items that we have on the agenda are all public safety related equipment, technology improvements that were included in the general obligation bond issue. So you're beginning to see the projects roll out. Next item is discussion consideration of approving and awarding proposal to Tyler Technologies for their Brazos e-citation and e-crash solutions, who submitted the only bid in the amount of $23,557, and in parentheses, 5-year total includes $564 annual maintenance for one device and $6,500 for software modules with a $1,300 annual maintenance. Chief? Captain Goforth?
I'd like to impress you with my IT knowledge, but I brought Jonathan to do that. So, go ahead, Jonathan.
This is, we budgeted for this as well. It's in our budget to start the process. We weren't sure when we were going to get the bond money. But initially, we're looking at doing 10 out of the what we budgeted. Then the rest of it will come out of the bond money. We're looking at outfitting at least 20, including 4 that will be dedicated solely to the motor officers, and the rest of them will be for the patrol officers.
And Jonathan, what will this do for us?
What this will do for us is the officer will have the ability to actually take a photo of the violator with the device, as well as have that person sign on the device. It will scan their driver's license, and it'll pull that information off the driver's license, as well as the vehicle. That will scan the VIN and pull the vehicle information in. And basically, some of the videos I've seen, I think Austin PD, this one particular motor officer was able to do a single citation in less than 2 minutes, which typically, if you handwrite it, it's anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. So it will reduce the time, as well as when we go out and do petty larcenies, anything, citizen citations and stuff, we'll automatically capture their information electronically and transfer that information to the courts, as well as our RMS system. And so the time that it takes to input the data in will be reduced, because we're only doing it once instead of having to write it out and then re-enter that information.
So in reference to that, do the person, will they receive a paper, printout type of citation, or what do they get?
Yes, ma'am. After they sign it, the officer hits print, and there's a Bluetooth printer that will print it out for them, and it already has their signature captured on it, and that'll be their copy.
And Captain Goforth, the e-crash solutions, I think we had a demo on that's the accident reconstruction piece, is that right, or?
No, that's, what that does is they allow the motor officers or any officer that's out on a crash scene, not only does it capture that information for citations, it'll also put it on the Oklahoma standard accident report.
Form,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
So it'll be an actual photo, or what, from the?
On the violator, we can actually take photos of the violator and attach it to the citation, yes. And the vehicle, just, I'm not really sure exactly how many photos we can take per citation or per report, but I know we can take more than one.
That's high tech.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add, I want to publicly recognize Captain Goforth. He does a tremendous job for the police department, city as a whole. He works really well with Ryan Rushing, their staff, on all of our IT issues at the police department. As you know, it's accelerated over the last few years is what we do with IT information. And Jonathan's been our go-to guy for many, many years, so we're very fortunate to have him. So I want to say thank you for what you do.
Chief.
So is this gonna save money?
Well, you
Save
know.
money, time.
Save money, it'd be time. It'll allow, the police officer to be, you know, more readily available for cost for service and cut down the time that they're spending on ticket information.
Does anybody have any other questions of the chief or Captain Goforth?
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, motion carries. Next item.
Discussion consideration of one, the purchase and installation of Kenwood E.F. Johnson P25 radios for the fire department in the amount of $283,588.34 from the Oklahoma County contract number CW19044 with Stoltz Telecom LLC, and two, approving the resolution authorizing the purchase and installation of Kenwood E.F. Johnson P25 radios under the Oklahoma County contract CW19044 with Stoltz Telecom LLC. Mr. Rushing?
So this item, in layman terms, is to purchase radios for the fire department. And we can, recently this year in January, Oklahoma County went out to bid and received a 22% off list pricing for these radios that from E.F. Johnson. And so this would allow us to purchase off that contract and save approximately 2% rather than going through the Oklahoma statewide contract.
And Ryan, these were vetted through the fire department?
That's correct, yeah. So they're a little different than the radios we had originally budgeted for and planned. Scott worked with the fire department and got a radio in their hands, and they were able to use it in the field, and it's my understanding that this will meet their needs.
Now, these are portable and mobile?
So we can purchase anything that E.F. Johnson sells off of this contract, is my understanding. So we can purchase both portables and mobiles. But as far as this cell itself, I'd have to look at the item to see exactly which ones are on there. Scott, do you recall?
It's both.
It is both, okay.
So I
And
thought-
that would outfit all the, all the needs of the fire department, including their mobile needs as well? All the fire trucks and equipment?
That's correct.
Chief is shaking his head.
Well, I got a nod from Scott and the chief, so it must be true.
I talked to both the chief and one of the ACs today, just because these are big ticket items. And I said, you guys have been looking at this for a couple of years. Has anything changed? Are you getting exactly what you need? And it's always nice to hear the chief and one of the members of the bargaining unit be 100% on the same page. We are going to be cutting edge technology, they said. Our guys are going to be safer, and we're in better hands because of this stuff.
Is that correct, Chief Norton?
All right,
Okay, any
Sean.
further discussion or questions?
Say the important part. Move to approve. Come on, Sean.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Next item.
Want to thank Ryan and Scott for their work on the radio, getting that bid taken care of. I know it took a lot of extra time and effort, so. Next item is discussion consideration of awarding the bid and entering into a contract with Casco Industries for new self-contained breathing apparatus and associated bid upon equipment and optional accessories in the total amount of $436,875. Chief?
Mayor and council, before you, in this packet, we took, and along with the radios, we took and we went out to EOC and did some live burns and the best scenario we could create for actual fire, and did test with the radios, tested out some air packs. We had 9 guys do wear test on
a couple of different packs, and they worked through, came out and decided what components were important for us. And as you know, the last time we did this was about 12 years ago, I believe. So technology has changed, so we are getting some new technology. We've got some Bluetooth capabilities with the radios that we tested that's going to allow us to communicate better through the mask instead of fumbling looking for a microphone to talk through. So we'll be able to go and not have to get this moved around. It's going to be a lot clearer communications on our part. So the breathing apparatus with Casco, it's going to be the G1 through MSA, which is a very good air pack. It's got some of the wear test on it, all fits the guys' backs very well. Have thermal imaging cameras on each individual pack instead of one person having a thermal imaging, which usually costs us about $8,000 to $9,000 if we can get one on sale a piece. So this is going to be a very good option for us and carry us on in the future.
And Chief, we were able to help fund these through a grant, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct. So both items on here, you've got the with the air compressors. So if you remember, we did the AFG grant and came out with some air packs and a compressor, $310,000, $31,000 matching for us. Other $310,000, roughly $50,000 was for a compressor. So that's the next item we'll talk about. So we're going to use that money coupled with the generosity of the citizens with the GEO bond to get really what we need to do and move on into the future. So we're certainly grateful for both aspects.
And these apparatus have a 15-year warranty?
They do come with a 15-year warranty on the electronics and stuff. If something goes bad, they'll send it to us and just take the other one back. We have over the years, we've gotten 4 people that can work on air packs on our department. The companies have agreed that they'll just send us the parts and allow those technicians to work on them. We won't, so saves us time of them travel to and from getting repaired. So we're certainly grateful for that as well.
So there's going to be a thermal imager incorporated with the mask?
Not on the mask, it's on the pack, on the body itself.
On the,
on
oh,
the
okay.
harness. Right here, that'll be handheld. There are some in the technology has them on the mask, but it's kind of point oriented where your head's at. This way they're able to move it wherever and just look down and see it and go on. So
Awesome.
we'll let you wear one when they come in.
All right.
Give you a run through.
Take a picture.
We can do that. We got a training center coming one day.
Take a photo.
Sean, you okay?
Well, any further questions of the chief? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Next item.
Discussion, consideration of awarding the bid and entering into a contract with Test Corp for 2 self-contained breathing apparatus air compressor fill stations at $41,576 each, and 2 integrated carbon monoxide detectors at $2,900, in the total amount of $88,952 to be placed at fire stations 1 and 6. Chief?
Correct. So currently right now we have an antiquated system that's been keeping us going, and we've got a lot of maintenance costs with it. So again, through the generosity of the federal government and the citizens, we're able to get a compressor for Station 1, and then we're going to place one at Station 6 as well. That way our crews have a kind of a centrally located spot to go fill up the compressors. And with the both monies being combined, we had enough to purchase the extra compressor, which will increase our capacity and reduce the time and the wear and tear on just one compressor alone when we have a large incident. We're also going to have someone that's called and asked some questions about the carbon monoxide detector. So an air compressor will take the outside air, compresses it down, and that's what they fill the bottle with. We do our best to capture the outside air, but it's not in the rig room drawing air in from the rig room. So we just want to make sure that the air that we're compressing is the best quality that we can for our guys who are going to be breathing it. So.
Any further questions of the chief on this item? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion and a second, I assume. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Next item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
You bet, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Item is discussion consideration of appointing representatives from Midwest City to serve on an advisory committee that would oversee efforts related to a pilot study for indirect potable reuse by the city of Norman.
Mr. Streets.
So as, before you and attached to that recommendation is a letter from the city of Norman inviting Midwest City to participate in an advisory role for this pilot project. I know that in the past, we have obviously, this has been a contentious issue, to say the least. We have passed a resolution in opposition to indirect potable reuse, but I will tell you that this opportunity, this invitation, is good for the city. It gives us an opportunity to get a front row seat to see the technology and obviously the regulatory hurdles that are involved with this decision. I also think this is their intent is to be transparent, which they have not been in the past, and Del City has also been invited to participate. You all will have the opportunity to appoint 3 different individuals to participate in this process, who would then be able to report back and provide feedback with regard to the process. I also think that there's a great opportunity for us to use some of the information we learn in this process to apply it to our wastewater treatment plant for future endeavors to involve indirect potable reuse or purple pipe to maybe the Soldier Creek Industrial Park. So I would tell you that I think this is a great opportunity for us and for the city, and we need to pursue it. This does not in any way give our approval for doing IPR. This just gives us the opportunity to see firsthand the process they're going to go through and participate in this exercise and oversight for this project. Any questions?
And the gentleman we talked to this afternoon that is going to serve, if approved by council, you want to tell us a little bit about him?
Sure. So I at the discretion of the council, obviously, had a couple of discussions with leadership, Guy, Vaughn, Mayor, Tim, about the possibility of appointing 3 specific people. We were given the opportunity to do 2 or 3 by the city of Norman. We recommended an elected official, potentially, a staff person, and then a citizen with preferably an academic background, science, and in some kind of science. Well, we were fortunate because there's a gentleman with the name of Steve Carano, who's a meteorology professor at Rose State College, also has a degree in geology. He is very knowledgeable with regard to the sciences, and he was willing to participate in this process. And obviously Mayor Dukes had a chance to meet him this morning and talk to him, and I believe that he is well suited for this. I have no doubt that there are other citizens that could be well suited for it, but this gentleman obviously kind of fell in our lap. It's an opportunity to involve him and give us the kind of expertise we need in the room to understand what they're talking about and be able to report back to us.
I've known
And Robert-
Steve for 20 years.
Yeah.
He is an awesome guy. He's developed the meteorology program at Rose State.
Yes.
He is extremely smart, and this would be, he does, not all meteorologists have a science background. He does. He would be great, and he also is a dyed-in-the-wool Midwest City boy.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Paul, would you be interested in being our staff person that's appointed to the committee?
I'd be honored if I had the opportunity to do that, yes.
And also, I might add that Councilman Burns has volunteered to be the elected official, if there's no objections on that. And in addition to what Councilman Reed said, after talking to Mr. Carano this afternoon, thoroughly impressed with his background, even though he was a cohort of David Payne at Channel 4. He very smart, very knowledgeable, and we talked about the importance of us getting this right, because anything that we do is going to affect our residents for a long time. So, Paul, I do appreciate your diligence on this, and you're willing to step up and serve on this. Again, with to you, Councilman Burns, as well, and we'll look forward to seeing the reports. So, with that being said,
Can you guys just suggest to Norman?
Move to
if this
so
water
approve.
is so safe,
Wait a minute.
that they just put it back in the drinking supply of Norman?
I will tell you that direct potable reuse is being discussed not only at the state level, but obviously nationwide. There are some hurdles to go over that as well.
Well, I'd like Norman to be guinea pigs.
And part of this process, to be honest, there are a lot of places in Oklahoma which indirect potable reuse makes a lot of sense. Scarcity, water is an important, a very precious resource. There are places in the state that if IPR was allowed and we had success stories for them to use to benchmark their own processes, would be absolutely important, imperative for the people that live there. So what I'll tell you is that this has not been done before. Those places don't have the money for it. Norman's willing to foot the bill for it. And again, it gives us the opportunity and people in the state to see how this process is going to work. Direct potable reuse, my understanding after having conversations with multiple folks at the Department of Environmental Quality, specifically the engineer, the head engineer for DEQ, and the gentleman that's in charge of water, has told me that right behind this one in queue is direct potable reuse. So as they move through this, DPR is right behind it. That's not completely out of the question. So I'll tell you that depending upon what hurdles they come across here, may drive the decision toward direct potable reuse instead of IPR. I can't speak for Norman. I'll just tell you that that's been a part of the discussion.
But the unknown, that we've talked about before, is not so much the particulate matter that can be filtered out easily, but the pharmaceuticals that end up in our drinking supply.
Constituents of emerging concern or contaminants of emerging concern, also called pharmaceuticals, those obviously do not simply filter out. That's part of the reason this is so important, so that we can kind of see what it's going to take to get to the point where everybody feels good about the decision. So
Burns, did you volunteer for this?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that means that we have direct access to know what's going on with the study. We just call you as city council, right?
Well,
What?
and probably what I'm gonna say is, you have Paul Street's number.
Oh, no. Unacceptable.
you're welcome to call anytime, Christine.
With that being said, the chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve those three candidates as previously discussed.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you, Paul. Next item.
Discussion consideration of appointing a replacement for Travis Jernigan to the Plumbing, Gas, and Mechanical Board. Mr. Moore?
Recommendation of Sean Sissons.
Sean? What was that last name?
Sissons.
Sissons? Need a motion to,
Is anybody have any questions or comments on Mr. Sissons?
Move to
Yeah,
approve.
you have his background, Jeff. Does anybody have any issue with this? Any questions? Here, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move into the new business public discussion of our agenda. Does anyone have anything to bring before the council? Keeping in mind that we cannot engage in conversation if it's not an agenda item. Hearing or seeing none, we do have an executive session.
this is discussion and consideration of entering into executive session as allowed under 25 OS Section 307B4 to discuss Shane Campbell versus the City of Midwest City, case number CM-2017-0154612-6A and CM-2017-01548K, and an open session authorizing the city manager to take action as appropriate based upon discussion in executive session.
Chair to entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mayor, before we go, could we recess that and get the rest of the stuff done and do that at the end, since we've got people waiting to give a presentation?
Sure, we can. So we'll forego the executive session. We move into further information of the agenda. The first item is discussion and consideration to approve an ordinance amending Midwest City Municipal Code, Chapter 28, offenses, Section 28-130, possession of dangerous drugs, Section 28-131, possession of and sale of certain toxins and other drugs prohibited, and Section 28-132, possession or sale of drug-related paraphernalia, and providing repealer and severability. This is on the agenda for further discussion or further information. The packet is in your packet for review.
Your Honor, this is one of the items where we are simply trying to get our ordinances into conformance with state statute changes.
So, I know it's further information, but on the ordinance, this section 3 that we're adding, I don't have a clue what most of the stuff is. Is it really ITS salts, as in its salts, or is that misspelled? It needs to be changed. Second line underneath section 28-130, the new section C.
I would have to check on that, Sean, before we
Like I said, I don't know what most of this stuff is, so that could be right, but it just seems weird.
looks out of place, right? I'll check on that.
No, this is further information.
It'll come back at the next meeting.
Okay, we'll move into item number 2 of our further information. A presentation of information by Dana Brockway, Executive Committee, Legal Redress from the NAACP of Oklahoma City. I do need to, we do have a couple of members on the council that need to, because of their relationship with the state of Oklahoma, need to recluse themselves and leave, so you can do that now. And anyone else that may have an issue with this. Okay, Ms. Brockway, thank you for being here and bringing this back before the council. I don't know if we discussed or not, but I do have to reiterate the fact that the city of Midwest City, nor the governing body of this city, has any oversight or any statutory oversight of the Department of Human Services or any of its components. This is just for information for not only the council, but also our constituents that may be in attendance or watching. And Mr. Pruitt, I do want to thank you for being here. It's good to see you upright and healthy. So go ahead, ma'am.
I understand. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the gallery. We're going to start with slide 4, and it's going to say the Pinnacle Plan. Who's doing the PowerPoints?
It's in the packet.
But I'll continue until he can find
Sure.
that, if you don't mind.
Technology is wonderful.
Exactly. We do have certain family members that are here that are constituents of Midwest City, either currently or in the past, that are current plaintiffs within a possible federal class action lawsuit against the Department of Human Services. The Pinnacle Plan was instituted in 2012, which had a host of issues governing itself with the abuse and neglect of children within the DHS system. As the handshakes came and there was a settlement agreement, there was a list of things that the Pinnacle Plan asked the state of Oklahoma to correct. Within that, the governing bodies are called co-neutrals. There's 3 members that are outside the state of Oklahoma that present reports every 6 months. Currently, the state of Oklahoma has not met the mark, and we are now 5 years in. The DHS's position is that because it takes so long, quote unquote, for things to filter down, that's why we don't see change. The NAACP's position is we should see some change. We shouldn't still see systemic issues. We have family members from every corner of Oklahoma with the same repeated problems. These are not family members that are connected. These are different families. So we have posed an issue that if family after family has a repeated event, there is still lingering systemic issues that need to be changed. The NAAC's position is not to be adversarial, but it is to ring an alarm and ask for help, which is where we present ourselves to you. We understand fully that you don't have state or statutory reach out, but you do have a voice. You can reach out to your senator and the legislator that oversees Midwest City and say, look, there is something happening. We expect some change for our families that govern themselves within Midwest City. And that's where we pose the question to you today. We are looking for a champion within Midwest City to open up that door, to open up that conversation and say, why are we still here? Why are people missing their children? One of the key items in the Pinnacle Plan was kinship placement. That means if a child is removed from the home, the children should be returned through kinship. There are family members that are eligible, but DHS voids the kinship placement, which means now the child is still within the system. We have families whose children are removed strictly from a dirty house, and they've been in the system 3 or 4 years. I find it odd that if your house is that dirty out of 3 to 4 years, I would ask that you show me some documentation. Let's match discovery for discovery. Because if it's just a dirty home, why are they removed for 3 to 4 years with nothing being done? And we haven't received an answer. DHS hides behind a cloak of confidentiality. We do understand the importance of children within that system to have anonymity. However, when parents have rights that are perfectly intact, those parents open up the door to ask for help, ask for advocacy, and ask for support. DHS, therefore, removes us as support or removes us as advocates and kicks us out of the courtroom. So in one hand, a policy says, please introduce yourself and come in and help these parents or speak on their behalf. But if we pose the question to them and say, well, your policy states one thing, but your behavior and actions are showing us something different, we then are removed. So how do you want us to help these families if you remove us from that situation? So we have a concern with that. Oklahoma's leadership developed the Pinnacle Plan to provide a clear, action-oriented plan for improving the lives of children, youth, and families. We don't see improvement. Over the course of 5 years, we see now more children coming into the system, more children being abused by foster families, more children being removed and not being placed with kinship. So we're asking the question, where's the change? DHS, in their defense, they have vehemently denied the reports that the co-neutrals are giving. And our statement back is, how is it then you're so golden with never having any accountability, with never addressing an issue, with no children being returned, but there's never an issue with DHS. It is always the family.
Ma'am, I don't want to interrupt you, but where our slides, where your slides up here now?
He should be on the Pinnacle Plan if you count down 4 slides. Oh, you're at the bottom. You're way at the bottom. So scroll up. Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling. Okay, go down, go down. And you'll see the Pinnacle Plan initiatives are based on a set of new core. So I'm kind of blind without my glasses. There you go, right there. Okay. So the Pinnacle Plan initiatives are based on a set of new core commitments that represent the foundation of reform. That is what the Pinnacle Plan was supposed to do. That was the clarity and the handshake that the state of Oklahoma gave to the main plaintiffs within the Pinnacle Plan. Those items are still not being done. We did reach out to Governor Stitt's office. We've had conversation with their general counsel. He is supposedly scheduling a meeting with the co-neutrals, and we're hoping that those things are done. But currently, while those conversations are happening yet again 5 years later, we still have children that are being removed from the home. The expansion of resource homes. That means the Pinnacle Plan was supposed to initiate more foster homes to get children out of shelter care. Oddly enough, on the news, when things started highlighting themselves, we see a child that's being put on the news, and he says, nope, I've been in shelter care for the past 10 years. So where, by their own testimony on the news report, as this child is being up for adoption and he's asking for a home, and it says that he's in shelter care, so we would ask, if you eliminated the shelters, why is this child and the DHS worker saying he's in a shelter? And that's on the news. Termination of shelter care for young children, obviously that's not being done.
Consistent and timely investigations and reporting of child maltreatment in care. Boys have a high rate of mistreatment in foster homes. Children under 3 have a high rate, and yet they're not being reported timely. We know this because we've intervened and we've made reports. We've intervened and made reports back to 911, and all we got was pushback, and then they isolate the families out, and these families are no longer can make reports. They have to go strictly to DHS. There is a problem when people isolate those families to say you can only deal with DHS. If our families have a concern with DHS, you isolate them to DHS providers, you isolate them to DHS medical staff, you isolate them to DHS officers. Where can the family have a voice if DHS screams confidentiality?
Can we ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you said 911. When you call 911, is that, do you all get that documentation for that incident of that child? Is that?
The families can record the 911 calls, and the families can ask the 911, whatever area, Oklahoma City, Midwest City, they can ask them to pull the 911 tape. The problem is that we know that we've encouraged families to call 911 because we know for a fact that the hotline did not work. We place complaints. Attorneys have placed complaints. When families visit their children, they go in, they take pictures. Those families then become targets. We have children that have cut marks on their lower extremities, and they were told that that is diaper rash. There is a significant viewing of diaper rash versus razor blade cuts to the lower half of a child. So we ended up having a meeting with Chief City. Chief City said, nope, you can call the police. We therefore told our members to go ahead and call the police. Those members then were so duly noted and retaliated against, they are all up for parental termination. Or they have to visit, if they were outside visiting, if they had the permission to visit their children at a Chick-fil-A, they ended up getting railroaded into now visiting into a small room, a 5x5, with the caseworkers now watching them. And they were now herded over to go to DHS's own doctor. There's a problem if you take the position that it's only your people that are right, your medical staff. Families should be able to initiate their own medical care for their children, especially family members that have their rights intact. It is a policy of DHS that these families be able to speak up for their children, but they're not being able to speak, they're being smothered. If you take a child into Oklahoma OU medical care or children's, the parent should be able to be present. We're finding out the parents are now being removed from that care.
From OU Children's Hospital?
Yes, ma'am, where the families themselves won't be able to go. If they place a complaint that says, my child is hurt, here's a bruise, here's something going on, we want to know, they don't have any follow-up. They don't know. They have to go strictly by what a DHS provider is saying instead of having their concerns documented.
So are you saying that the system is a systematic where they have their own structure of doctors and their own little system where they send them to the doctor, they send them to certain places that DHS control? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. DHS is a controlling environment.
And so in other words, if they in that controlling, you're saying that they do as what DHS tells them to?
That is correct.
Okay.
And there lies a conflict of interest. If you want truthful reporting, or if you take a parent to court, a parent needs the opposite of what is being told. If they're saying that their parenting is what caused an injury, we do have parents out here now in the gallery whose children were born with milestone deficiencies, whose children were born with some medical concerns that would mimic shaken baby syndrome. Had they had the opportunity to get a counteraction to those diagnoses, you can very well have DHS's medical staff present, but those family members would also have their doctors present. And that's the problem. Everything that goes into a trial for parental relinquishment is strictly a DHS organization. The parents have nothing and no one on their side to counteract anything that DHS is saying. So if you have huge conflicts of interest within the organization itself, you have to have huge conflicts of interest in the infrastructures. DHS's commitments was equity where all children, youth, and families have access to and to receive unbiased treatment and services. That is their policy. Obviously, that's not being done because you have to go where DHS wants you to go. Keeping children safe with their families through prevention services, kinship placements, and timely reunification. So oddly enough, reunification happens months later, and the kicker mark is always 6 months. 6 months to where the foster family can file for earned income credit, 6 months to where a foster family can now do a motion to intervene and say, I want that child. When they go in and they ask you for, what do you want placement, traditional placement or foster family placement, DHS has already prejudged and preset these families for termination. And it's not based on facts, it is strictly based on feeling. Meaning if your caseworker and you have a disagreement, if your caseworker and you do not see eye to eye, or you don't agree to everything they want, you will absolutely be put up for termination. And that is not fair, that is not equal, and it's not within the DHS model and mission statement.
So with that 6-month time frame, does it extend more than 6 months, meaning that they are entitled for earned income for that child, for that amount of time for that child during that year? Am I
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. Those foster families can claim earned income, and Governor Stitt, there's also been incentives of now more than $5,000, plus you get the Medicaid, you file on benefits for those children, you get foster family benefits, so there's a dollar amount on these children.
So does the foster carer make false accusation for as the relatives seeing these, being able to see their child? Do they see their child during those 6 months?
Well, ma'am, by a common sense application, if I have an invested interest to where I want to adopt your child, I absolutely would think that they would manufacture some evidence, which we know by evidentiary standings, they have manufactured evidence against the family members. We have evidence on video and audio where a single mother who was put in a small room with five children, she had 5 children during her daughter's birthday party. 3 workers entered into the room to watch the party, which is against the policy itself. On the video, all of a sudden you hear a caseworker saying, you've hit me, you've threatened me. That mother ended up going to jail. The video contradicts everything that is happening, and she's currently fighting a criminal charge when it was totally unnecessary. And they know that there's video that exists. So we have concerns with that, because again, if you have a conflict of interest, if you're acting as the adoption agency, you're acting as the place that facilitates the money, you're acting as the parent for the parent and for the child, you have an invested interest. It's no longer neutral. We have children that during visits, parents will send us pictures where some of the males have ended up with sores on their penis. They didn't go in the system like that. A 3-year-old should not have a herpy-looking item on their bodies. They shouldn't come up with mystery bruising. And when a parent asks about how things are going, the parents are dismissed. We take issue with that. We take issue when you take a child into your entity and your mission is to protect them, and they come back during a visit faithfully every week without fail with new bruising, new bite marks, new injuries, new open sores. We take huge issue with that. And then you get money for it. And then when you get that money, you're thinking that the foster family is going to buy that child their shoes, their clothes. They're making the decisions at that point. That child goes to school. But when we look for an ethnic child, and they're not in a culturally based home, it is odd that and difficult to comb the hair of that child. There has to be something where we start shaking hands and saying this child is now looking worse in the system than if they stayed with their own parent who could comb the hair. Ethnic children have a coarser hair. Ethnic children have to do different things. It is just a reality. It is a conversation that people don't want to have, and it's just what needs to be said.
Well, that is correct, because African American children do have a different grade of hair, and it does take care. And I have seen people with kids like that.
We've seen
that
children
we
go to
know
visits
that
with
it's
matted
possible.
hair,
Yeah.
or where it would be so kinked up now because it
Yeah.
hadn't been maintained that the child now cries, or the parent has to come in to try to fix the hair, and it takes the whole visit.
So I can't understand, why would they have a child if they cannot maintain their hair and their, I mean, it's money, okay, right, he said money.
That's right.
I understand that, but that should be neglect right there.
Well, that's a conversation that we're trying to have with DHS that's been
So
shut
that's
down. All right. So once you're in the system, you go into the foster care system. There are nearly 9,600 children in state custody in Oklahoma now, and I'm sure that number is higher. Within that 9,600, we have to ask ourselves what minority base, Indian, Black, what biracially based children are now in the system. And we can tell you a majority of them are minorities, those that are financially struggling, those that are not academically escalated to able to argue back or articulate what has happened in their home, single parent female who may be in a domestic violence relationship, some things where they could have been taught differently of how to raise that child versus having those children removed from homes. Of the number of kids in state custody, between 55 and 65% coming into the foster care are placed with their extended family and friends. We rebuff that number because we know firsthand that kinship trickles down. We haven't seen kinship placements. We've seen excuse after excuse, delay after delay, and there's no documentation as to why. We have families here that submitted in 20 names for kinship placement, and oddly enough, the child still stays in foster care. More than 60% of children in foster care are under the age of 12, and most have brothers and sisters also in care. But you have to ask yourself what happens to the kids that are over 12. We found that those kids remain in the home. So we have to ask ourselves, if one child was able to be removed from the home, what made it so safe where one child can stay? And the answer strictly is because they don't get enough money for the older children. A lot of people don't want the older children because it's not financially prudent for them. So if you can replace and give a child back to the home, you should be able to replace and give all the children back to the home. If you give a referral system for service for one child, you would have to, by common sense, give a referral system for all children in the home. And therefore, we ask ourselves, where's the money going?
Have you all ever asked them what if it was their children that was done like this? Have you all ever asked them that particular question?
Well, truthfully, ma'am, it would be irrelevant to ask them if it's their child because it's not.
But
you
just
can
so they
ask that
have
question, but
just to ask them, in conversation, so that they can have some thought is how can you treat some child like this, and would you treat want someone to treat your child like that?
But then you're asking somebody to put themselves in a close
Right.
proximity
Sometimes
of relationship with the issue.
Sometimes I
And-
think it needs to be done.
Well, I mean, we could ask, but that doesn't mean they're going to be obligated to answer. And because that obligation isn't met, we don't waste our time in the things that we know that they're not going to answer. We give our resources to go, here's where we are. You can't ask somebody to put themselves in somebody else's shoes when they're not going to understand. You can't ask somebody to say, this is how it is in the foster care system if they've only been pushing paper and getting them in the foster care system. You have to be able to have a human, moral fiber approach to it. And what happens is when you see a 3-year-old go to a visit whose eye is black and the constant rhetoric is, oh, he fell down, he fell down. Well, how many times can the same child fall down and he's saying, no, foster dad hit me, and it not be heard? But yet you take him from the family, from the mother who was protecting him from the possibility of domestic violence, and now you've kept that child out of the home for 2 or 3 years. There are huge questions of just things that are not being answered. The foster care system, the number and rate per 1,000 children under the age of 18 in foster family systems in Oklahoma during the state fiscal year. The foster care families reported back to the Oklahoma Department of Human Services, who reported a population data, says that from 2012 to 2017, we had 8887, and now we are at 9854. That means our population in the foster care system continually increases. And you'd have to ask yourself why. Either we're not investing to train somebody or to educate them, or maybe, just maybe, some of these kids are being removed and not being returned falsely. That has to be an investigation. We are asking that an investigation be started. We've been ringing that bell for a while and it's been ignored. And you have to ask yourself, why would it be ignored? If you're saying that you're all for the best interest of the children, you want to protect the children, but that's not happening, why would you ignore the bell? 72% of all children fatalities are younger than the age of 3. Nearly 1/2 of child fatalities are younger than the age of 1. And nearly 4 times the fatality rate of a 1-year-old child in the population of DHS in Oklahoma is the child fatality rates increase. Oklahoma is rated number 1 for abuse and neglect. And you have to ask yourself, why? If the Pinnacle Plan was instituted to stop and halt those hurt and harms, why are we climbing the ladder still? Why are we going upwards and we don't even have a stopping point? And you'd have to ask yourself, because then in the news, it says that $10 million has been given to foster families for needy families to adopt your child. I would have to beg the difference that if I have to give out $10 million, I shouldn't be assisting you to adopt out a child. You should have been ready from the beginning, which goes to show the $30 million that was initially missing. Now we're at $10 million that we're giving to foster families to adopt your child. What handshake has been had? What conversation behind a closed door was had to say, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars to adopt a child? And why? We want to see evidence. We want to see trial transcripts. I know for one of the young ladies that's going to speak today, we read her trial transcripts, and we find that a lot of attorneys don't preserve the weight in court. And when you're not preserving that, or you're not filing an objection, either you're not practicing law fully or you're intentionally not doing it. And we want to know why. We ask Midwest City to speak up. Mayor Dukes, we ask you just simply to make a phone call back to Jason Lowe, back to your legislature, and say, why is this alarm being ignored? Why are children not being placed in kinship? We have evidence. We're not just ringing the alarm and saying we have words or suspicions. We have audio, we have video, we have parents, we have family, we have kinship. People that take the time to come out and say, listen to me. We have parents that are saying they're being bullied in the judicial system to relinquish their rights. There is a huge concern with that. We have concerns with judges. Judges have judicial immunity, but you have to operate in a fair and equal standing when you deal with people and families. That's all that the NAACP is asking. That is all that the families are wanting, and that's all the children that they deserve. Any questions?
Ms. Brockway, first off, thank you for coming back and giving your presentation. Appreciate it. It's informative. I know the Pinnacle Plan was a result of a lawsuit. Those are agreements that the state entered into.
That's correct.
I agree with you. They should be following the law as well. So my only promise that I can make to you is I will call my 3 representatives that I'm close to and raise the flag.
I will take that promise, Mayor Dukes.
And I will do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Having been in law enforcement 31 years, Councilman Burns the same, we've seen it, been there, done that, so we understand the plight. We applaud you stepping up and bringing the information. I would also ask that if you haven't already, reach out to other city councils and the cities that, because there are 77 counties in the state of Oklahoma and thousands of
We're reaching.
municipalities that are affected as well.
That is correct.
Ladies and gentlemen that are present that came to speak, I would ask that you ask for your indulgence for the sake of time that we forego that. We ask that we appreciate you being here. You've got an excellent spokesman. I don't think that anyone else could say it more eloquently than Ms. Brockway. And I would just ask that your indulgence to forego that and bring this to a conclusion, if that's agreeable to you.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I started in Oklahoma City in 1980, and back then, it was the law enforcement officers that made the call at the houses. Have you seen, since the law has changed, now they can't make that call? I always thought that the police officer who knew the neighborhood, knew the environment,
That's correct.
what was going on, was oftentimes better than someone that didn't necessarily know that.
I would agree.
Have you seen a difference since that law changed?
We have seen where police officers don't want to get involved, to where they immediately, regardless of the situation, will call DHS, and the child is immediately removed. When you have a beat officer that knows his route, he knows his grid mark, he knows the families, he knows what family has domestic violence or who just yells on the weekend, he knows what child is going to raise the bells of being at risk versus this just may be a very loud family. When you suppress the law, when they have the eyes on the grid, you do not benefit the community, you do not benefit the families, you do not benefit the communities financially or the judicial system. You make a very contentious relationship. So yes, sir, we have seen where it has been detrimental.
Because we used to call them frequent flyers. We'd go
That's
to
right.
the same house, and we would know what to expect there. The quality of life it shouldn't be, but it is different
That's correct.
in different areas. And I thought that, I personally thought it was a mistake when they changed that, because, like I said, the police officers in that.
We agree with you. We do.
Ms.
But when you
Brock-
take that money out of the community and you start putting it into giving it to families to adopt the child versus educating or informing families and doing a corrective measure, society itself is no good.
Can your PowerPoint, I can't really take it off of my agenda. Is there any way you could send that to me?
Yes, sir.
Because I do have, I don't know how you have 3 representatives. I only have 2. But I've got a couple of representatives that I could never say as eloquently what you have said, nor could I condense this, but if I have the PowerPoint that I can get in front of people with your information, that will speak way more volumes than me trying to tell people what you told me tonight.
Yes, sir. And I believe Ms. Donaldson has it as well.
Well, again, thank you very much for being here, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. And our thoughts and prayers are with you. I don't know where you are in your plight. I can't sit here and tell you I know how you feel, because I don't. That's never happened to me, I've seen a lot of families tore apart by this very same issue, and again, our thoughts and prayers are with you. You are constituents of Midwest City. I assume you live in Midwest City. We will do what we can as individuals to reach out to our representatives and make this aware and continue to see where they're at. I know a big deal is funding at DHS. I know that's a big deal. And it's time for the state to step up on many different fronts, and this is one of them. Again, thank you guys for being here. Any further question?
I was going to ask the families to stand up, but I don't think it would be in their best interest for them to stand up and we recognize them, because they may not want to be filmed or anything.
Some of them still have open cases.
Right,
They do come to support, so we as an organization ask them to not.
Yeah, we don't want to
vocalize.
jeopardize that.
That is correct.
We don't.
And this is televised, by the way, so.
Yes, sir. So we can't ask them to do that,
Thank
Councilwoman.
you.
Well, again, thank you for being here, all of you.
I will be in touch with my elected officials at the state capitol.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does complete our further information, and I would entertain to go back to the executive session and entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be going into executive session. We probably won't be in there for a few minutes, so we'll be right back. Entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
And I have a motion and a second. All in favor, any saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Also would, now that we're out of executive session, entertain a motion to allow Assistant City Manager to proceed as discussed.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Does anyone have anything to bring back before the City Council? Hearing none, we're hereby adjourned. I call to order the Midwest City Municipal Authority. We do have a consent agenda, and these items placed on the consent agenda, trustees by unanimous consent can approve routine agenda items by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with approval of trustees or members of the audience which discuss an item, it will be removed and heard in regular order. Chair to entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, any saying aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Now enter the new business public discussion of our agenda. Does anyone have anything to bring before the trustees? Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned. I now call to order the Economic Development Authority. We do have a consent agenda, and then would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. New business public discussion. Does anybody have anything to bring before the Economic Development Authority? Hearing none, we are hereby adjourned. And that be it, folks.